All right, everybody, get ready, because in this deep dive, we're tackling stress head on.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to dig into what it actually is, how it messes with us, and most importantly,
Right.
what you can do about it.
Yeah.
We've got some really interesting research lined up, practical advice to help you navigate those everyday pressures.
You know, it's funny. Stress is something that everyone experiences, but the key is really understanding how to manage it well.
That's it. That's the key.
And the good news is there are actually strategies to do that.
So before we get into the how-to, let's break this down a little bit.
Okay.
What exactly is stress? Why does it feel like such a drag sometimes?
Well, at its heart, stress is a totally natural biological response. It's a response to challenges.
Okay.
You can think of it as your body's like alarm system,
Okay.
an internal alarm system, right?
Yeah.
So when you encounter something that seems like a threat, like at a big deadline at work or, back in the Stone Age, a woolly mammoth coming right at you.
Right, exactly.
Your body, it releases these hormones, things like cortisol and adrenaline.
So it's like our body is hitting the panic button, even if the threat is just an inbox full of emails.
Exactly. It triggers this primal fight-or-flight response. And don't get me wrong, that was super useful for our ancestors to try to, make it through the day. Survive, exactly. But the thing is, our bodies haven't really caught up to, like, the 21st century.
Oh, interesting.
So that on-edge feeling, that state of high alert, it's not meant to be permanent, you see.
So then what happens when it is pretty much permanent? I mean, what happens when our body stays in that kind of overdrive mode for too long? Do we just burn out or what?
It can be a lot more serious than just feeling burned out.
Really?
Yeah, there was a study in 2018 by the American Heart Association, and they actually found a really strong link between chronic stress and an increased risk of cardiovascular problems.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it turns out that when those stress hormones like cortisol are just coursing through you for long periods of time, it can actually damage your blood vessels,
Oh, wow.
which makes them more vulnerable to inflammation and plaque buildup.
So not good.
No, not good for your heart at all.
So it's not just in my head then. Stress really does have a real physical effect on my body.
Absolutely, yeah. Managing stress isn't just about, feeling calmer. It's about protecting your well-being overall,
Right.
both mental and physical.
Interesting. Okay, so our bodies are basically going into fight or flight mode, even if it's just, traffic or a million emails in our inbox.
Right.
But before we start hitting the snooze button on that stress response, we have to figure out what's setting it off in the first place, right?
Exactly. You're spot on.
Okay.
Identifying those triggers, those personal stress triggers, it's a crucial first step.
Okay.
And, it's different for everyone. What really stresses one person out might not even faze someone else.
Makes sense. So where do we even start? I mean, are there common things that tend to stress people out, things we should be on the lookout for?
Absolutely, yeah. Just think about those everyday pressures we all deal with, right? Work deadlines, relationship stuff, money worries.
Oh, and don't even get me started on the pressure we put on ourselves.
Oh, for sure.
I am my own worst critic sometimes, setting these unrealistic expectations and then freaking out when I don't meet them.
Yeah, that internal pressure is huge.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the sources we have, it talks about dividing stressors into two categories. The things you can control and the things you can't.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. Just acknowledging that right off the bat, it's like maybe it takes a bit of the pressure off.
Yeah.
Okay, if I can't control this thing, maybe I can at least try to control how much I freak out about it,
Exactly. It's about focusing your energy where it's going to actually make a difference, right?
Okay.
So for the things you can control, you can come up with a plan, try to solve the problem.
Right.
But for the things you can't control, it's more about managing your own reaction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How you navigate those sort of choppy water.
I like that, navigate those choppy waters.
Yeah.
So how do we actually do that? How do we get better at dealing with those triggers, especially the ones we can't just make disappear?
Well, there are a lot of different techniques. And to be honest, sometimes it's about finding what works for you.
Okay.
But one that's actually really powerful, it's something we do all day long without even thinking about it.
Okay, what is it?
Breathing.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical, but also I'm like, hey, breathing's free, can't hurt to try, right?
Exactly.
So what's the deal with breathing?
So breathing, it's not just about getting oxygen.
Right.
It's also directly connected to our nervous system.
Oh, interesting.
So when we're stressed out, our breathing tends to get all kind of short and rapid, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's that fight or flight response kicking in.
So it's like a vicious cycle then, right? Shallow breathing, more stress, even shallower breathing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the cool part. Deep conscious breathing, the kind where you're really filling up your lungs, it actually stimulates what's called your parasympathetic nervous system.
That's the good one, right? That's the one that's like, chill, everything's cool.
That's the one, the rest and digest system, the opposite of fight or flight.
Okay,
So
nice.
it's like hitting the brakes on that runaway stress train.
I like it.
And, there's actual research on this, a study from Harvard back in 2015.
Yeah.
It showed that doing these deep breathing exercises, it can actually really significantly reduce your body's stress response.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
Yeah.
What kind of deep breathing techniques are we talking about?
There are a bunch of them, but one that's really simple, really effective is called the 5-second rule.
5-second rule. Okay.
You breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 5. You hold it for 5, and then you exhale slowly through your mouth for another 5.
Huh. You know, what blows my mind is how something so simple, something we literally do all the time without even thinking about it, can have such a big impact.
It is pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
And the best part is the more you do it, the better you get at it, the easier it is to trigger that calming response, even when everything's going crazy around you.
All right, I am adding the 5-second rule to my stress-busting toolkit for sure.
Okay.
But I have a feeling breathing is just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Oh, there's definitely more to this whole stress management thing, yeah.
All right, so we've got this whole deep breathing thing in our back pocket, ready to, calm those stress alarms.
Just a good start.
It's a good start, but what else? What other kinds of strategies can we use to tackle stress?
Well, this next one, it might be a little tougher for some people,
Okay.
but it can be a real game changer when it comes to managing stress.
Right, I'm listening.
It's setting boundaries.
Oh, boundaries. Okay, that word always makes me think of, like, those awkward conversations.
Yeah.
Maybe disappointing people. It's not really my forte, to be honest.
I hear you. It's something a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah.
We feel bad saying no. We don't want to let anyone down.
Right, right.
But the thing is, if you're always putting other people's needs before your own, that is a recipe for burnout, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Taking care of yourself, it's not selfish, it's essential,
Okay, good point.
especially when we're talking about stress management.
So how do we actually get better at this whole boundary thing? Like, it feels like everything's a priority these days. How do you know when to say yes and when to politely decline?
Well, I think it starts with really understanding what your priorities are, what you value most.
Okay.
Once you figure that out, then you can start being more intentional with your time and energy.
Be more intentional about when you say yes so you can really show up for those things that matter.
Exactly.
But what about all those things that, we can't really say no to, like work stuff, family obligations, all that?
Even with those things, there's usually still some wiggle room, some space to set boundaries.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Maybe it's about, I don't know, setting realistic deadlines at work or having an honest conversation with family about needing some downtime.
Being like, hey, I love you, but I need a break.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
And the research actually shows this, like setting boundaries, it's not just good for your, mental health.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it can actually make you more effective in other areas of your life too.
Interesting.
There was a cool study from UC back in 2017. They found that people who were good at setting boundaries, they had less stress, and they were just happier overall, more satisfied with their lives.
It's like creating a more sustainable way of living instead of just running on fumes all the time, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I like it.
And that kind of leads us to our final stress-busting strategy,
Okay, hit me.
making time for self-care.
Oh, okay, now this is something I can get behind.
Right.
It sounds a little more fun than setting boundaries.
Yeah, a little more maybe indulgent,
Right.
but it's not just about, bubble baths and face masks.
Yeah, okay, so what are we talking about here? What kind of self-care helps with stress?
So it's really about those activities that kind of nourish your mind and body. Anything that makes you feel refreshed, rejuvenated.
Okay.
Like for some people, it's being out in nature.
Yeah, I love that.
For others, it's doing something creative, like painting or writing, or maybe it's moving their body, like yoga or dancing.
Yeah, there's something about, like, moving your body that can really, really help, I think.
It's all about finding what works for you. There's no one right answer.
Right, exactly.
But the key is to make it a regular thing,
Oh, okay.
like a habit,
Make it part of your routine.
Yeah, there was a study in 2019. It was published in the Revista de Salud Mental, and it showed that people who, actually made self-care a priority, They weren't just better at handling stress in the moment, they also bounced back from challenges faster.
It's like you're building up those resilience reserves, right?
Exactly.
So you've got something to draw on when things get tough.
Yeah, it's an investment in your well-being.
This has been great. I've learned so much today.
Good. I'm glad.
Before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom for our listeners who are, ready to tackle their stress?
Just remember, it's a journey, not a sprint.
Okay.
Start small, be kind to yourself, celebrate those little victories.
I like it.
Even tiny changes can make a big difference over time.
Couldn't agree more. And on that note, here's something for everyone to think about. If stress often comes from feeling like we're not in control, what's one small thing you can do today to feel just a little bit more in charge of your well-being?
I love that.
Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep learning, and take good care.